Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Hagan. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Today is the day. The first vote, perhaps the only vote, for Speaker of the House. Will Mike Johnson return as the Speaker? Yes, there are holdouts, and there's a lot of criticism of those holdouts. We're going to be talking about that here in just a little bit. We do have some updates on the New Orleans terrorist attack and the cyber truck attack as well. We also have a few things here about the media that I think you're going to find very interesting, and a couple of New York State issues that will be, well, we'll just say get your blood boiling this morning without giving too much away. So thank you so much for joining us. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. I got a couple waves coming in. Feel free to reach out at any time to weigh in on the topics of the day. First, the new update on the New Orleans terrorist attack. The FBI is now saying that the driver acted alone and that it was 100% inspired by the Islamic State group. The FBI revealed that the driver, Samsud Jabbar, posted 5 videos on his Facebook account in the hours before the attack in which he proclaimed his support for the militant group and previewed the violence that he would soon unleash. It's always interesting that they, and I don't, this isn't criticism on the FBI, but that these videos are posted and nothing is done from the time they are posted until the attack. And this happens in other instances as well, such as school shootings, etc. Quote, "This was an act of terrorism. It was premeditated and an evil act," said Christopher Wray, the Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI's Counterterrorism Division. "It is 100% inspired by the Islamic State." Now, I think the New York Post had a very good point on this, which is, and it was the editorial board, and they said it was terrorism, right? And Joe Biden said it's terrorism. The FBI now says it's terrorism. So why did the FBI lie about it at first? Why create these scenarios that raises conspiratorial conversations with people? But after Samsud Jabbar's New Orleans attack on that New Year's Eve celebration turned into that violent tragedy, the FBI continues to show why it has forfeited the trust of the American people. And I think that's a very good point that they're making. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Because when they come out, well, there's a couple things. They've said there was numerous people perhaps working alongside him. Now they're saying it was just him, acted alone, 100% a terrorist act. Now, I know you can always say breaking news. There's a lot of things unfolding, a lot of questions. But then why speak to these issues? Now, some would speculate that they tried to distance from the terrorist attack for maybe some, for lack of a better word, woke reason, for some politically correct reason. But when you see an ISIS flag fixed on his truck, that's probably a giveaway that it's terrorist inspired. Yet the FBI at first refused to call the attack what it plainly was, terrorism. Now, we can also have the conversation about when you're terrorizing people and trying to murder them with your vehicle and explosives and guns, isn't that by definition terrorism? But we'll continue. That's even though it arrested a shocking 10 ISIS would-bes in 2024 alone, thankfully, before they were able to carry out their attacks, including a 17-year-old in Arizona. Althea Duncan, assistant special agent in charge of the New Orleans office, said specifically, quote, "This is not a terrorist event." That's a direct quote. That was early on. Now the FBI has been forced to admit what was obvious to everyone, including the killer's brother, who said that Jabbar had been radicalized. And this is another example at first where the government and these government agents tell you, never mind what you're seeing with your eyes, what you're experiencing, trust us. You know, that can go to something as, not as simple, but inflation, public safety. We keep being told that never mind what you're experiencing, what you're feeling, what you're seeing, pay attention to their bureaucrats and the statistics they put together. Here's an example. If we see an ISIS flag flying in the back of that vehicle and we were to believe, Miss Duncan, that, quote, "this was not a terrorist event." Now the FBI, again, has admitted it. That has since changed, of course. They have now admitted it. Plus, Duncan also initially claimed Jabbar didn't act alone, only for the Bureau to walk that back as well. Now, it seems like a question the Chief Federal Domestic Law Enforcement Agency should be 100% clear on before saying a word. And that's the point. It's not about not having all your facts at first. Why speak to them? Why create this air of just questioning what's going on? They screwed up so badly that the D.C. office sent in one of its counterterrorism honchos, Christopher Wray, to clean up the mess. Very unusual, yet no one should be surprised. The Bureau's initial hesitance to tell the truth plainly stems from the Biden administration's most insane talking point, and we have a flashback on this from what they talked about, the Biden administration has talked about frequently, and that is that white supremacists are the most dangerous terrorist group in the country. That is something that they, and specifically Joe Biden, has reiterated over and over again. This is the agency that wasted its time going after school board protesters, if you recall, and religious Catholic groups under Biden political hack, Attorney General Merrick Garland. This is all while jihadist recruitment ramped up. And we talked about that yesterday, that politicians, the administration, the FBI, others have been hiding their head in the sand. We talked about it on yesterday's program, this very much a September 10th mindset, which is terrifying, especially considering we've had these open, porous borders for so long and what that can mean. Now, again, this specifically what happened in New Orleans was an American citizen. I'm not suggesting it that way, but as we mentioned at the very beginning of this piece, that in 2024, 10 ISIS would-bes were stopped, luckily, before anything could happen. Even as the visible evidence of the ISIS threat in the West has been piling up for years. Remember the monstrous Bastille Day truck attack in Nice in 2016? It killed 86 and injured hundreds. ISIS claimed it. Berlin saw terrorists ram Christmas festival goers the following year. Another obscenity ISIS claimed. ISIS claimed the deadly London Bridge truck attack that same year. New York saw its own truck attack in 2017, which killed 8 on the far west side by another ISIS follower. Call these people what they are, which is terrorists. Don't hide or don't use that language that it is not terrorism in so matter-of-fact terms if you are not positive. They're not lone wolves or troubled youths or those that suffer from mental illness. Jabbar was not on a terror watch list, the FBI said in a congressional briefing. It was, if he was on their radar in some other way, and the agency's miserable record under Biden suggests that's far from impossible, heads should roll. Actually, heads are already set to roll as President-elect Donald Trump has a major bureau shakeup high on his to-do list. To the loud chagrin of the D.C. business as usual crowd. Yes, they keep saying as Trump makes these picks for his cabinet, or when he was, that people's heads were exploding throughout Washington. That means, well, means what? Exactly what Trump got elected for, which was to shake things up and not continue with business as usual in Washington. The FBI's bungling in New Orleans is fresh proof that Trump is right and that the swamp needs draining to restore public faith in the corrupted, hollowed out, and utterly politicized institutions. And this goes back to conversations we've had regarding the nameless, faceless bureaucrats that have so much power. But continuing with the breaking news from this, and this is not going to be the whole focus of the show. We definitely want to talk a lot about Speaker Johnson's race. We also have a few things here, like I said, about New York. But according to the FBI, Jabbar planned to harm his family and friends, but realized that he wanted headlines focused on, quote, the war between the believers and the disbelievers. In those 5 videos posted on Facebook, which were time-stamped beginning at 1:29 a.m. and the last at 3:02 a.m. In the first video, Jabbar explained he originally planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned the news headlines would not focus on the, quote, war between the believers and the disbelievers, end quote. Additionally, he stated he had joined ISIS before this summer, noting that the FBI had obtained 3 phones linked to the suspect as well as 2 laptops. Those laptops were recovered at the manifold address. We're going to talk about that address in just a moment. We are looking into everything in his life. While we have interviewed many people who know Jabbar, we still need to talk to others. Whether you know Jabbar personally, worked with him, served in the military, or saw him in New Orleans or Texas, we need to talk to you. You may not think you have relevant information, but what you know could tie it to one of our investigative leads, they continued. So when they went to his home, there was a bomb-making station and a Quran open to a very chilling passage, knowing that he would be investigated after this, knowing that there would be major investigations, probably signaling a message in his Quran atop a bookshelf, a centerpiece in his living room. It was open to a passage reading, quote, "They fight in Allah's cause and slay and are slain, a promise binding." A cryptic verse, and no doubt done for a reason. The passage expounds on Muslims' responsibility to kill Allah's enemies and to be willing to die for that mission in return for eternity in paradise. Numerous books about Islam were also on the shelf around this squalid home, while a prayer rug was rolled up nearby. So that's a few of the updates. Now, as I mentioned, his brother knew that he had been radicalized. He spoke with numerous outlets, but Fox News spoke with him directly in Texas, Beaumont, Texas, where they grew up. His brother, Abdur, said that they grew up Muslim along with his whole family. He said that Jabbar stepped away from Islam but found his way back following his 2022 divorce. Jabbar struggled to find himself throughout his life, his half-brother told Fox News. He said that his half-brother joined the army to, quote, "find something, to set him straight, ground him, and maybe find a viable career path." Following his 2 divorces, though, his brother said that he was looking for some type of guidance. His half-brother blamed radicalization for the attack and said that he did not see any signs prior to the attack, as well as expressing his condolences for the 15 lives lost. He said that this was not a direct reflection of his brother and the Muslim community. Now, the mosque in which the terrorist attended, they have encouraged their community, the people that attend that mosque, to refer any FBI inquiries to CARE, that is the Council on American Islamic Relations. So don't speak with the FBI during this very important and vital investigation. Direct all questions to, again, the controversial Council on American Islamic Relations. So the local mosque has urged its members to avoid speaking with the media, and anytime the FBI contacts them, to refer them to CARE. That's a very important statement in this. Quote, "If anyone is contacted by the media, it is very important that you do not respond," the mosque said. "If approached by the FBI and a response is necessary, please refer to CARE," and I don't know what this one is, ISGH. "It is crucial that we stay united at this time as we condemn these terrible acts," the mosque continued. The White House severed ties, with CARE last year after the group's co-founder said he was, quote, "happy to see Hamas attack the Jewish state, killing 1,200 Israelis." CARE was also ordered by a judge back in November to open its books and reveal its sources of funding after a defamation suit it filed against an ex-worker backfired. The Muslim rights group has accused the former chapter leader of carrying out a defamation campaign against the organization, including by implying that CARE is funded by foreign governments and terrorist organizations. Now, it's unclear if Jabbar, who reportedly converted to Islam at an early age, ever attended this mosque, but they understand that they're on under a microscope. So that's a quick overview, some updates, a few other quick updates on this. We're going to tie it in, unfortunately, with this rise as well of anti-Semitism that I think we've talked about on this program a lot, not just on college campuses, but of course in the streets of New York City as well. We're going to talk about that. We do have a few things here about the Cybertruck, and then we're going to get into the media. We're going to get into New York issues. Also, a lot here about the speaker's race. Do you think at the end of the day there will be a speaker? And if so, will that speaker be Mike Johnson? Would you like it to be Mike Johnson? Would you like it to be somebody else? Let me know. Keep those comments, keep those waves coming in, and we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Today's top story, increasing fuel costs continue to drive up inflation, making it harder to afford everything from food to home heating.
Here at Hustle Sins, we know the only way to beat inflation is to fight inflation. So we're fighting back with zero interest financing and big cash rebates. Get a 4-person hot tub for your family for as little as $100 per month and pay zero interest. Or save up to $3,000 on a fabulous salt system hot tub. And of course, you will always get Hustle Sins' unbelievable service. Don't let inflation fears kill your dreams. Fight back with Hustle Sins. Remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hustle Sins.
and Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon.
Weeknights at 6:30 on Big Fox.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is history making.
The Big Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Thanks so much for joining us on this chilly Friday morning. I guess ESPN is being blasted for not airing the national anthem or the moment of silence ahead of the Sugar Bowl yesterday. All eyes are on ESPN to see how they would handle it. Noticeably absent from the pregame broadcast on the main network was the national anthem and the moment of silence held in honor of the tragedy that occurred about 1 mile away from the Caesars Superdome, where Notre Dame and Georgia squared off. Their excuse has been the awkwardness of coming back from commercial break and moment of silence, et cetera, et cetera. But that did not stop people on social media from being outraged. It's a shame they didn't share the national anthem. It was beautiful, I guess, but no one got to see it because the Disney ESPN conglomerate decided not to show it, one fan wrote. ESPN declined to comment on the criticism when reached by the Post. Now, oh geez, I got everything out of order here. Now the rhetoric is beginning in this. The White House is suggesting, I'm sorry, not the White House. Senator Whitehouse, very big difference. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, a Democrat from Rhode Island, was on MSNBC yesterday and claimed that President-elect Donald Trump's nominee for FBI Director, Kash Patel, has, quote, nightmare views that will, quote, close the part of the FBI that helps protect us against foreign terrorism. Some would maybe call this rhetoric fear-mongering. Remember the history of all of this. We, for a long time as Americans, have made the determination that we did not want the CIA and other American intelligence agencies operating within the United States against Americans. And the FBI had a criminal law enforcement responsibility, and it was focused on terrorism primarily as a criminal act. Then came 9/11, and people understood that the firewall between the intelligence community looking outward and the FBI only looking at criminal matters inward was a failed prescription that we needed to coordinate better. We needed to take down the firewall, make sure that the FBI knew where its lanes were, the intelligence community knew where its lanes were. It was actually a very successful shift and a very important development to the response to 9/11. To be completely unaware of that and to think that the FBI has no proper role, what does he think the CIA should come in, when they should come in and start doing the FBI's work in the United States? Or we just stop looking at terrorism preventatively? We just look at it when a crime takes place and go investigate? It makes absolutely no sense. With Patel, you don't have to stretch. He puts it right out there. He's going to close that part of the FBI that helps protect us against foreign terrorism. He's going to shut down the Hoover Building, which I'm no great fan of the Hoover Building, but day one, that's a lot of confusion. Where do people go to work now? That's your first thought. Then, of course, he's got his enemies list of people who he thinks the FBI should go to work on that he's going to be bringing with him. And he's got this pledge to go after people like you, civilly or criminally, he says, if in his view, in the government's view, the press isn't telling the truth. So any of those would be pretty disabling. And the fact that he brings all that basket of sort of nightmare views to the job with him is going to be a lively hearing. So the fear-mongering begins. We talk about the flashback when Biden downplayed the ISIS threat repeatedly and then said that white supremacy is the most lethal danger. Quote, according to the intelligence community, terrorism from white supremacy is the most lethal threat to the homeland today. Not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda, but white supremacists, Biden said back in June of 2021. And they give other examples of him saying the exact same thing over and over again. Again, making you question whether or not the full force and focus of the government was on terrorism, was on ISIS threats. Now, some Republicans are, and this, even the headline for this is pretty, well, I'll read it for you and let you be the judge. Coming from the Business Insider, Republicans push for swift confirmation of controversial Trump nominees in the wake of the attacks. And we heard a little bit about this yesterday, the summer, saying, okay, now's the time for us to come together and make sure that Trump and his team are ready day one to protect us from terrorism, because obviously there are real threats. Top Republicans are calling for the Senate to swiftly confirm Donald Trump's nominees. We'll see where that goes. That's Republicans calling for that, of course. I think, as you see from Senator Whitehouse, that may not be an easy sell. But then you have the media, too, pushing conspiracy theories. The Huffington Post's their absurd claim that incoming President Trump stoked hate about New Year's terrorist attack in New Orleans. Quote, this was the headline from the Huffington Post. Quote, Trump stokes hate with false insinuations about New Orleans truck attack suspect. The president-elect shared anti-immigration misinformation moments after an inaccurate report from Fox News, read the false subheadline. This piece of hysteria is premised on the Trump statement released on True Social, where he said, when I said the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in our country, that statement was constantly refuted by Democrats and the fake news media, but it turned out to be true. Later, he released a second statement that included, quote, this is what happens when you have open borders with weak, ineffective, and virtually non-existent leadership. The DOJ, FBI, and Democrat, state, and local prosecutors have not done their job. They're incompetent and corrupt, having spent all their waking hours unlawfully attacking their political opponent, me, rather than focus on protecting Americans from the outside and inside violent scum that has infiltrated all aspects of our government and our nation itself. Democrats should be ashamed of themselves for allowing this to happen to our country. The CIA must now get involved, et cetera, et cetera. So this was, again, always looking for an example to attack Trump. This is a Huffington Post's looking at this and saying now's our chance to take a dig at Trump. The same is happening with the Cybertruck attack in Las Vegas, where for some reason, they interviewed his uncle, and his uncle said that he was a Rambo-type guy that loved Trump. So now everything is focused on this guy and this supposed love for Trump. I find it very odd that you would use a Tesla, which has a connection to the Trump administration, outside of a Trump hotel, if you're supposedly this big Trump fan. But that's where their focus is, because they're looking for that opportunity. That's why the media has lost so much credibility, looking for the opportunity to attack President-elect Donald Trump. Let me try it again. On NBC News Justice, an intelligence correspondent, Ken Dillanane, said the ISIS-inspired radicals and far-right extremists are concerning to officials. The FBI director and others have been saying for some time that the threat from ISIS-inspired terrorist attacks is greater than it has been for a long time, particularly post-October 7th, in light of the controversy over the war in Gaza and people inflamed across the Middle East about it. You also have a situation where political violence in the United States is increasingly a risk, and more people are turning to extremist ideologies, whether it's ISIS or people who don't like healthcare executives or far-right extremists. So you have a confluence of risk factors, but what counterterrorism officials are saying is that they are very concerned. So that's a quick overview of what the media is saying. I've got something, man, we have so much we could get to. But we're going to have to skip around because I already see that we're running late. I want to tie this in, this radicalism here, in just a moment, and I think it's going to be shocking to you. There's a very interesting piece by Douglas Murray that we're going to talk about. This is not going to be the whole focus of the show this morning. We have to talk about the speaker's race. I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you want to see Speaker Johnson? Not see Speaker Johnson? Are you standing with someone like Chip Roy or Massey, who are saying, some are saying, well, I'm not sure yet, or Massey's coming right out and saying he's not going to vote for Johnson. I don't think this helps and Massey doesn't seem to be a big fan of Trump. He endorsed Ron DeSantis in the primary. So I guess he's not really worried about that agenda. Even though there's a landslide and the American people want it, he's not concerned about that and trying to be a little bit of a fly in the ointment. But maybe you are saying I side more with Massey or side more with Chip Roy. I would love to hear your thoughts. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, it's haunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
The Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather, up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Call them today for all your business and home security needs. Thank you to Boss. As we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Douglas Murray has, I think, a very important point when we talk about this radical extremism, this terrorist attack. He said, from college campuses to Afghanistan, we have let Islamic terrorism rise again. If you think about it, after the attack in New Orleans, in New York City, specifically, there were protests in the street where they were calling for intifada. For years, citizens of Israel have had maniac jihadists driving at them and trying to mow them down in the streets. But this got only cheers from the dolts on U.S. college campuses and New York street protesters. And then he gives some examples where it's no longer just these radical protesters. This time, the wishes of students at Columbia and other college campuses arrived on the streets of New Orleans. A man carrying an ISIS flag drove a pickup through New Year's revelers, killing 14 people and seriously injuring dozens more. There are several things to say about this. The first is that although many people hoped the threat of jihad violence had diminished, it has not gone away. With jihadist groups running Afghanistan and Syria, among other countries, they are back in control of vast areas as they were before 9/11. And we talked about those numbers yesterday, and this is a very lengthy piece. I don't want to get into it specifically. You can find it for yourself in the New York Post. Douglas Murray does an amazing job. So why are we so craven while people on the streets and campus of this city actually call for terrorism, while the citizens in New Orleans have just suffered it? It is a question that needs answering, and there should be a vast reservoir of horror, rage, and disgust aimed at Americans who celebrate terror, even as their fellow citizens are suffering it. And it has spread, as we have mentioned. And this ties in, too, with the radicalization on college campuses, as we talk about with the anti-Semitism, obviously going very much hand in hand in this scenario. On college campuses, he mentions that. Did you see at Columbia? A Columbia University professor, his name's Joseph Massad. You may remember him, bringing him up on this program in the past. He will teach a spring semester class on the history of Zionism, the movement for Jewish self-determination. Now, how do you know Joseph Massad, who's going to be teaching the spring semester class? He celebrated the October 7th attack and denied a Jewish link to Israel. Massad, who is a, quote, Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African Studies professor, will teach a class called Palestinian and Israeli Politics and Societies, which was last offered 25 years ago. Now, the day after the October 7th, 2023 terror attack by Hamas, he posted an article on the radical anti-Israel website, Electronic Intifada, in which he praised the attacks, describing them as stunning and as a victory for the resistance, hailing the jubilation and awe of the Arab world. That is what we're talking about when we talk about the radicalization on college campuses, and specifically Columbia, where you would think they would have learned their lesson with, when their dean stepped down or their president stepped down, when they had so much pushback. But again, protecting the radicalized professors and students, and not caring, apparently, about the Jewish community on their college campuses. But that ties in, and we're going to get away from this. We're going to talk about Speaker Johnson, but this shocked me this morning. And it's coming from the Wrap. And they call it Truth Bombs of 2024, which is, I guess, trying to be a hip way of saying kind of a look back at 2024. This is what their takeaway for 2024 is. Are you ready for this? The media is over. I even hate saying this. Anti-Semitism is cool. And DEI is kaput. This ties in with a story that we had when the protests first began, where the left has taken up. Remember, there was those protesters that were actually using swastikas and saying that that was some type of symbol of their protest. But again, I don't want to read this whole piece. It is from the Wrap. But taking a look back at 2024, there's a few things. As I said, the year the media fell apart, and the idea is that so many of the podcasters became important in the presidential race, and we've heard from the new press secretary, which will be Donald Trump's press secretary, suggesting that at the White House press briefings, they may have more non-traditional media entities there. The coup de grace was a presidential election in which liberal cable news went to war against Trump and failed to stop his win, while billionaire newspaper owners at the Washington Post and Los Angeles Times bucked their newsroom and refused to endorse Kamala Harris. This was a tipping point that will stand in history, they write. Then, this is sad. The year anti-Semitism found a home on the left. This is 2024, taking a look back. Don't tell me this has nothing to do with anything, because it does. The shocking rise of anti-Semitism in mainstream institutions, whether that's the BBC, Columbia University, or Irish and Canadian government offices, it's bad. It shows badly for good people everywhere. It doesn't take a trained student of history to know that when societies start demonizing Jews, catastrophe usually ensues for both the Jews and those societies. And then it goes through and gives some of these instances throughout the year. This will continue to be a tough conversation, but let's have it, they said. And then it's the year that DEI hit the wall. It was bound to happen. Pendulum swing, and this pendulum is swinging pretty hard. It's about all of the diversity, equity, and inclusivity programs. And finally, I don't want to go through all the other look in 2024, or the year of Elon Musk, they said. But that all ties together, and it's a very sad state of affairs. Okay, also we have a couple updates here. How am I doing on time? Not good. We have a couple updates on the Cybertruck bomber, Matthew Livelsberger. We're finding out more about him as we give you all the news this morning. We are going to get into the speaker's race, some New York State issues. We can talk more about this if you would like. Keep those comments, keep those waves coming in. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. We'll find out more about the Cybertruck bomber when we come back. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselsen's Hot Tub. Hesselsen's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselsen's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselsen's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselsen's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselsen's.
Heather and I had an argument just like any other couple. I was lost and lonely. I had snapped, I had a gun, and I was going to take my own life. Heather helped me realize that there was still life to live, for the better of myself, my family. My weapon is now safely put away.
My son, Ricky, took his life by the use of a firearm. It broke me in ways that I never knew that I could be broken. And I contemplated suicide. Afterwards, we found out his girlfriend, she was pregnant. If that was my grandson, I was gonna have to be here for him. I still own my firearm. I keep it in a safe because I want to keep my grandson and myself safe.
A moment of crisis can happen to anyone.
Store your gun securely, locked, unloaded, and away from ammo.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, taunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam. Brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Give them a call today for all your business and home security needs. Just a couple quick updates as we broadcast live from the Hesselsen studio. The Cybertruck bomber, Matthew Livelsberger's wife, had recently broken up with him just days before the explosion outside Trump's hotel in Las Vegas. His wife, who had a baby daughter with Livelsberger, reportedly told him that she knew he had been cheating, the sources said. After leaving Colorado, Livelsberger rented a Cybertruck, as you know, through the Turo app and made his way home. The media is making quite a large deal about the fact that his uncle, I believe it was his uncle, said that he was very patriotic, a Rambo type who loved Trump. He used to have all patriotic stuff on Facebook. He was 100% loving the country. Dean, his uncle, Dean Livelsberger, said. He loved Trump, and he was always a very patriotic soldier, patriotic American. It's one of the reasons he was in Special Forces for so many years. It wasn't just one tour of duty. So that's what the media is running with this morning. And some are even, and this is so sickening, some are even gloating over it. Democrat social media influencers are gloating over the Tesla Cybertruck explosion at the Las Vegas Trump International Hotel, which killed the driver and injured 7 others. The explosion, which took place, you know the whole history of it. Now, despite the tragic, demoralizing event that took place in Las Vegas, left-wing outlet Midas Touch editor-in-chief Ron Filipkowski allegedly used an image of the explosion as a meme to describe, and I quote, a perfect metaphor heading into 2025. Unfortunately, that post gained over 330,000 likes on X in less than 24 hours. Now, Republican activist Scott Presler said, "Are you taking the loss so poorly that you're now resorting to celebrating terrorism? You may want to delete this. Is this metaphor how your people are violent and plan to harm Trump and Elon, isn't that incitement of violence?" said political commentator Rogan O'Hanley. Representative Nancy Mace also criticized Filipkowski. "Ron, for the love of our country, take this photo down. People died today due to 2 acts of terrorism, including the one in this photo. Inciting violence will only encourage more." It's so So odd, the place that we are in this divided country. Now, we are coming up here in just a little bit. We're getting away from those topics. I do want to highlight a lot about Speaker Johnson this morning. He feels confident. You perhaps have seen the interviews with him. He feels confident he will get to that number. The math is very, very tricky for him. Not meaning that he won't end up with it, but at least on that first vote, the media is framing it as this is Donald Trump's first challenge, that a loss here would be devastating. I don't tend to agree with that, though I would like to see a unified front just in general from Republicans who had such a landslide victory. Why there would even be talks, and I think this speaks a little bit to the Republican Party, unfortunately, why there would even be talks that at the end of the day, Hakeem Jeffries could be Speaker of the House, and I don't mean the end of today, but the end of these votes. Now, that goes to show you kind of the dysfunction, for lack of a better word. And I'm not saying it in the way that the mainstream media says it, where they're looking for dysfunction or looking for this divide in the Republican Party. I'm just saying that it should not come down to this. This should be a time of unity for a party that just won a major victory in November. But it looks like there are going to be some people that want to be the fly in the ointment, that want to be the kingmakers, that want to be the ones that people come and seek for their votes. Matt Gaetz was very much like this during the McCarthy debacle. Liking that attention, liking the people coming up to him and almost essentially begging for them to switch their vote. Very frustrating. I think it will be a little bit frustrating to watch today. If you're not aware, we made this announcement yesterday, but it will be on at noon. That's when constitutionally the vote begins. It's a very important time frame because the 6th is when it is time to certify the election. So people do not want to delay on that. So they want to make sure that there is a Speaker of the House in place by the 6th, which means they're already wondering if it could take 3 days. Now, if you recall it with McCarthy, it was fascinating to watch, I'm not going to lie, for someone that likes politics. But perhaps what would not be deemed the best for the country, or at least not the best for the Republican Party. So we're going to talk about all of that in depth, but I would like to hear your thoughts on Speaker Johnson. I know we have some differencing of opinion, and that's fine. That's what I love about this program. That's why we have the number on the bottom of the screen, so we can hear from you. I do have a couple New York State issues. We also have a couple things here about the media that I do want to get to, and maybe perhaps the Biden administration. Yes, Biden did award, as an update, a news update from yesterday's program, Biden did award Liz Cheney, the January 6th committee chairman, and the January 6th committee chairman, a medal. Quote, U.S. is better because of their dedication, said the president. President Biden awarded the leaders of former January 6th House Select Committee, former Republican Wyoming Representative Liz Cheney and Mississippi Democrat Representative Benny Thompson, the second highest civilian medal for their exemplary deeds of service for their country. Quote, the Presidential Citizens Medal is awarded to citizens of the United States of America who have performed exemplary deeds of service for their country or their fellow citizens. President Biden believes these Americans are bonded by their common decency and commitment to serving others. The country is better off because of their dedication and sacrifice, the White House detailed in a statement. Well, you got to feel good if you're Liz Cheney getting this, because she became very relevant for a moment when Kamala Harris, for whatever reason, many people said it was a very bad decision on Kamala Harris's part, hitched her wagon, for lack of a better term, to Liz Cheney, saying, look at this endorsement that I received. And Liz Cheney was getting all the interviews and getting all the attention. That actually backfired because a lot of Democrats said, hey, I thought we were told for years that the Cheneys were the worst. What are we doing here? Costing Harris some votes and not getting any Republican votes. So now she's back to kind of irrelevancy. The media will put her back in there. Don't get me wrong. Anytime you have a Republican that's willing to badmouth a Republican, especially a sitting president, Republican sitting president, she's going to get attention. She'll probably, if she wants it, she could have a program on some of these outlets, even though they are struggling. And MSNBC, who laying off staff, cutting salaries, having a whole shakeup, they would still, I would think, consider hiring a Liz Cheney if Liz Cheney stays with the attacks on Republicans. See, it's really interesting in this scenario because they like her when she's attacking Trump. They like her when she's supporting Harris. But if she were to come out and talk about some conservative issues in a positive way, that's when they'll turn on her again quickly. And I'm surprised she didn't learn that, because the same people that attacked her father so vehemently, so nasty when he was vice president, she sided up with them. She wanted to be on that side and get interviewed by them. It's very interesting dynamic, but Biden, in kind of a typical fashion, as his way out the door, he's been taking numerous digs at Trump. This is another dig. He used Jimmy Carter's death as, for lack of a better term, I hate using this term, as an opportunity to take a dig at Trump, using the term decency and suggesting that Trump doesn't have decency, which is ironic that someone talking about a president passing away then uses the term decency to attack not even a political opponent, attack someone with a political difference. Decency was an ironic word to use. But here's another example where Biden awarded Liz Cheney this important medal. So she is back in the news. Your thoughts on that? But right now, I hear the Corning whistle, so we got to take a break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Football's newest show breaks down all things NFL. GMFB Overtime.
Check out top highlights, player interviews, special guests, and everything in between. 5 days a week.
GMFB Overtime. It's football for everyone.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, it's haunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
It's your season of Sherry.
Having a good time has always been my #1 goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Thank you for joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson Studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. We have a comment, this coming from our friend Ken in Horseheads. Frank, with the history as our guide, we all know that the legacy media is going to twist themselves into pretzels to attempt to spin any issue into an anti-Trump theme. And we're seeing that. They did not learn their lesson, especially like in MSNBC. All these ratings are plummeting. They're not learning their lesson, and they're continuing with the tried and true method. You're right, Ken. Trump could slip and fall, and the legacy media would say that he threw himself down because he subconsciously hates himself for the damage he's inflicted on this country. Perhaps, Ken, or if he slips and falls, they'll say he needs to take a cognitive test, the same test they denied or not denied, they did not want Biden to take. But I agree. Next up, or not next up, continuing with what Ken had to say, the biggest travesty is that half the country's voters are sheeple, and they still believe what the legacy media tells them. And the legacy media does know that they have this soapbox, and that's why they use it in very, well, you know what, Ken, since you brought it up, I wasn't going to bring this up next. I was going to go to New York, but I think this ties in too perfectly. Joe Concha from Fox News says, as 2025 dawns, legacy media is in a free fall. Their public trust in tatters, their viewership and readership catering. The wounds are as a result of two factors. First, the landscape the legacy media once controlled is no more. No longer do the liberal media ecosystems of New York and Washington, D.C. set the terms of the national conversation. No longer do a handful of major corporate entities like ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, the New York Times, and Washington Post regulate thought and debate. Instead, the most listened to broadcasts are these podcasts and things like that, and Fox News, of course. And I'm not going to go through all the numbers because he gets into the actual numbers, and it is shocking, but it gets a little bit wonky. And if you look at it, Elon Musk's X, formerly known as Twitter, is the #1 source for news in the world, whatever you want to think about that. Second, and a major reason for the exodus, is the loss of respect that followed the legacy media's gross breaches of integrity and ethics in recent years. Many in the media debase themselves by blatantly lying about the state of Joe Biden's cognitive abilities or lack thereof. They openly cheered on Kamala Harris's campaign, and I know I mentioned this over and over again, but I did find it just fascinating to watch election night coverage where on the mainstream media they were presenting it to you as if you obviously voted for Harris. There was no, in their mind, there was no Trump supporters in their audience. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. That's really how that coverage felt that night as I watched it. But I'll continue. And they also even liked their goofy running mate, Tim Walz. Out of existence, laughably selling them as joyous, centrist candidates. They talked about vibes, and they talked about joy, and etc. And all the while, they trashed Donald Trump and his supporters as fascist and uninformed, garbage. But these efforts failed. And uninformed is a good point by Joe Concha, because that's what they keep trying to say, uneducated, you know. But these efforts failed, and as Trump swept his way to a resounding victory, his triumph underscored both the waning influence of the mainstream media and the public's disdain. Overall, according to Gallup, just 27% of independent voters trust the media, and only 12% of Republicans say the same. With those factors as the backdrop, watch for these three media trends in 2025. Quote, not quote, but number one, more journalists going independent. The old days of brick and mortar newsrooms as the absolute necessity, those days of reporting are over. The money for those who succeed in these forums can be quite lucrative, meaning the new media, the online publications. But perhaps most importantly, these writers, corporate gatekeepers are no more, freeing them to control their own content. Number two to look out for in the media, pay cuts and layoffs, and we're already starting to see that. The days of big contracts for network and cable news hosts are coming to an end. We've already seen stars like Rachel Maddow take a $5 million annual pay cut, while veterans such as Chris Wallace jump ship at CNN for his own podcast instead. Reason? The 77-year-old, who was reportedly pulling down $7 million annually, was told he could stay on only if he took a sizable slash in his salary. Why? The ratings simply aren't there to justify the huge contracts. Without strong demand, advertisers find other places to spend their money. Cord cutting also continues to accelerate, with more than 10 million people saying goodbye to pay TV services in favor of streaming. Add it all up, and falling revenues and fewer subscribers means smaller contracts and likely large-scale job losses. Then expect an explosion of defamation suits. ABC News recently settled with Trump after George Stephanopoulos repeated on 10 occasions, folks, in a single interview with Representative Nancy Mace that the former and future president had been, quote, convicted of rape. It was a lie, and Trump rightly called the former Clinton operative out via defamation suit. They, as you know, settled, and we talked about the irony of that, that with that $15 million settlement that goes to the Trump Presidential Library, essentially the media that hates him so much, has done everything they can to keep him down, are now paying for his presidential library. As I had said at the time, I really hope that they put a brick there with George Stephanopoulos' name. You know how they do that? We'll buy a brick and be a part of the presidential museum, or buy, you know, this tile or whatever. I hope just out of kindness for that $15 million defamation suit, there is a George Stephanopoulos brick at the Trump library. Now, some media observers on the left cried foul, arguing ABC has been bullied into settling. Yes, and I saw a piece yesterday saying, and Drudge Report has become so kind of anti-Trump and anti-conservative. The article was, conservatives are the ones that are trying to limit free speech now, but I'll continue. You can't have the news industry worrying about this sort of stuff when they're just simply doing their jobs, said Jim Acosta, because apparently doing their jobs includes intentionally referring to a rape verdict that never happened. Moving forward in 2025, I expect much or more such lawsuits will be leveled against media outlets that lie, as Stephanopoulos did, or twist the facts, as actor Justin Baldoni alleges the New York Times did in a $250 million defamation suit filed Tuesday. The legacy media, with a few exceptions, are on the brink of their most brutal year yet as Trump heads back to the White House. It's a perilous position for an industry that has inflicted its fate almost entirely upon itself. Yes, a self-inflicted wound. So I thought that tied in perfectly with what you were saying, Ken, so thank you for that. Let's take our last break of hour number one. We will talk about the speaker's race, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
When you think boots, think Hesselson's. Hesselson's has the largest selection of work boots in the area. Composite and steel toe boots, Met Guard boots, soft toe boots, and hikers, duty and western boots, all in one location. Hesselson's, Amira Heights. Hesselson's has men's and ladies boots in all sizes and widths. Choose from the largest names in the industry: Danner, Carolina, Timberland Pro, Keen Utility, Thorogood, Area, and Georgia, to name just a few. Hesselson's has been locally owned and operated since 1955, so when you think local service and great selection, think Hesselson's. Remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Are you ready for winter in New York State? Ready for thrills like this? Discoveries like this. Views like this. Are you ready to make memories? Plan the perfect trip or have an impromptu getaway. It's time to explore everything that makes New York easy to love. Discover more at iloveny.com.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is History Making. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horsets. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. We are wrapping up hour number 1 as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. Just a quick announcement before we move along. We're probably going to start the next hour with kind of a New York State update. There's a couple things here that are kind of interesting. Then we're going to get into the speaker's race and some other issues, of course, to make sure that hour number 2 is jam-packed, just like hour number 1 is. But I wanted to highlight on Monday, and I think this is an important message, and please spread the word if this doesn't relate to you, but could relate to someone that you know. Andy Petros is going to join us on the program, and he's going to tell us about his upcoming, I think, a very important Zoom forum, if you will. The Zoom forum is in regards to how to run for local public office. Now, we talk about how important it is, whether we're talking about the Dolton mayor, Tiffany Henward, the self-proclaimed super mayor, and we talk about how the town went from being flush to broke. And, you know, we give, allegedly, because she audited, or she vetoed that audit. But it's so important to know who you're voting for locally, but also maybe getting involved. Either that's running for office, or maybe it's getting petitions signed for someone that you trust, that you know is doing a good job at the local level. Because local elections, I know we have a lot of fun talking about the national stuff, but at the end of the day, the local elections are what affect your day-to-day life perhaps the most, because they're the ones that change, you know, the codes, or they change the local laws that affect you at that local level. So Andy Petros, the former Chemung County legislator, he's going to be joining us on Monday. In full disclosure, we did record it the other day, because you're going to see that I no longer have Christmas decorations up, but when Andy is on the program, there's Christmas decorations. So I don't want you to think I redecorated just for Andy. But he has this forum coming up on Wednesday, next Wednesday, January 8th at 6 p.m. It's a 2-hour introductory online Zoom session to discuss how to run. In 2025, all town municipal seats across New York State are up for election. The info session is taking place in January, since this is an important note, since petition time to get on the ballot starts in late February. Isn't that hard to believe? So if you're thinking about this, and we'll hear from him on Monday, and I just wanted to highlight that interview. But if you are thinking about running for local office, let me say, take this weekend and really think it over seriously, because now is the time. You don't have much more of a chance, because it's February is when petition season begins. That's also to piggyback off of Andy. Let's see if I got the right one up. I do. Steuben County is going to host a petition training class. There's all the information you need to know. It's the only one of its kind in Steuben County. It's February 1st at 9 a.m. at the Steuben County Annex, located at 20 East Morris Street in Bath. Now, this is if you're running for office, you want to get involved, you want to figure out how the petition process works. This is what they're going to be covering, essentially. Political calendar, how to properly fill out a petition, who can sign and witness a petition, the number of signatures required, filing deadlines, prima facie review and petition challenges, who participates in the caucus and the caucus process, requesting voter lists, campaign filing requirements, a list of all elected officials up for election this year, and updates on the even year law. This session is the only petition training class to be held in Steuben County for the year of 2025. So if you are thinking of running, and by the way, if you are thinking of running, I would love to hear from you. Love to be a part of the ride, because it is a fascinating, fun ride. And as I've said a million times, win, lose, or draw, you can be proud of yourself that you took that jump, you took that leap, and got involved. Okay, hour number 1 in the books. Actually running a little late. Hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2 on its way in mere moments. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking.
At John Ullman & Associates, our clients come first. As a fiduciary, we build personalized plans rooted in our shared ethics and values.
And you've been doing this for 45 years?
Yes, our in-house team creates custom plans built for you and your family.
We like the idea of a relationship that lasts.
That's what we're all about, helping you and your family build and protect wealth for generations. John G. Ullman & Associates, here for everything your money touches.
I'm Mary Offord. I've lived here for 70 years, but I do fine right here in my house, and I want to be here as long as I can be. And I feel comfortable knowing that if something happened to me, someone would know because of the cameras that are installed in various spots in my home. That has been a wonderful gift to me to be able to have that security and that support from Full Circle America, and that's what it's all about.
And Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a couple of comments coming in. Let's read those before we get into some New York State issues. It's not about the Climate Change Superfund. As I mentioned yesterday in the program, we will be getting Assemblyman Phil Palmisano on the program soon to talk about that disastrous bill that Governor Hochul signed a few weeks ago. But first up, from a viewer, legacy media's left-leaning and Trump bashing is what caused me to stop listening to the news on a national level. I understand. Oh, thank you for the waves. I understand. It does become really tedious. And that's why I mentioned the election night coverage, because it gets to where I'm saying this doesn't relate to me. You're telling me, basically you're selling me what you're saying as if I were a Harris supporter. So I understand exactly what you're saying. At some point it gets not only tedious, it gets insulting. Perhaps legacy media could stand to learn to go back to the future and listen to feedback from local media. Very good point. Thank you very much. All right, Ken writes in, as I have said before, I have no faith in the Republicans sticking together to help push the agenda that a majority of Americans want. I know, Ken. They want to be liked by the Democrats and legacy media. It makes sense that if your goals are notoriety and monetary enrichment, the legacy media, while losing market share, collectively still has the largest megaphone. So if I had to bet the farm on what will happen in the speaker's race, I would have to say that Mike Johnson won't get the votes. If any Republicans vote for Jeffries, they will get the red carpet treatment from the Democrats and legacy media for a short time. I hope I am woefully wrong. I do too, Ken. I don't even want to say this because I'm a somewhat superstitious person. I don't think, do I want to say this? Hakeem Jeffries becomes speaker. I think you may have one or two, maybe. I can't, but you can't see a Massey or a Roy voting that direction. But you're right, Ken. There's a lot of people that will look at that temptation and say, boy, think of all the coverage I'll get on MSNBC, CNN. You know, there'll be calls for me of running in different positions, higher positions. I will get the red treatment from the Democrats temporarily. Just ask John McCain, who always thought the media loved him because he was a maverick. And then the moment he got the nomination for the Republican to be president on the Republican ticket, he, I think it was that day or the day after, they ran a piece suggesting he cheated on his wife. They started attacking him. Same with Mitt Romney. You know, binders of women and dogs on the roof and bully in school, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm with you, Ken. I don't know how it's going to go. I know that Speaker Johnson, we're going to talk about this more in depth after the New York issues, but Speaker Johnson definitely says anyway he's confident. Trump's endorsement definitely helped, but Massey, in no uncertain terms, will not vote for him. So that's one. Chip Roy is still being coy, and people are on the Republican side very upset about that, basically saying he's showboating. And I think to a point, Massey definitely is. Chip Roy is kind of fitting to his brand, but I think there's a lot of these people. Matt Gaetz was one of them. who like the attention, who like to get the pats on the back, who like to have people come up to them and beg them for their vote, and it is very frustrating, and we are going to talk about it and keep those comments coming in about the speaker's race. Hey, did you know, and I know we mentioned this quickly a couple weeks ago, but adopting instead of shopping, New York has now made it official that buying pets in stores is illegal. As of December the 15th, the New York Puppy Mill Pipeline Law, is what it's called, is in effect, banning the sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits in retail pet stores across the state. Pet stores caught selling dogs, cats, or rabbits after December 15th could face penalties up to $1,000 per violation if you purchase a product or register for an account through a link, blah, 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 blah. Okay, anyway, I start with that, and then we go into something. Well, there's two really good New York issues. One, the Post is suggesting that the leftists know their policies will result in more victims, and they don't care. And this is the idea of what we've talked about with the bail reform and the defund the police, and what we've seen here in New York, which is time and time again coddling the criminals or encouraging the criminals in many ways and tying the hands of law enforcement. Unfortunately, we've talked about it extensively with Sheriff Jim Allard, Sheriff Schramm. What they say is keep letting violent perps walk free and the violence grows. But progressives insist going easy on criminals matters more than preventing innocent people from being killed or maimed. And they give specifics on this, quotes from people like Alvin Bragg and the state legislators behind New York's criminal justice reforms. They go on and talk about victims that did not need to be victims. And they said, what the theory is from the left is enforcing the law is an inherently evil, white supremacist project that must be eradicated. The people who get robbed, raped, or murdered along the way are collateral damage. The needless, bloody chaos won't stop until this poisonous ideology is rejected at every level of government. And this is why they keep telling us, no, it's actually safer. I mean, Governor Hochul has that photo op on the subway the day that that woman was burnt to death in the subway. Now, I know that's a New York City issue, but I'm saying in general, we've seen it at the local level because of bail reform and how many victims that were victims that did not need to be victims or were repeated victims because of those laws. So I hope that people are waking up. That's why I think Governor Hochul, though she's not backing up what she's saying, but trying to suggest that, trust me, I'm for public safety, because she saw how close Lee Zeldin came to defeating her just by running on public safety. She's seen the polls where people just want to be safe. And listen, they're paying a lot of money here in New York State to live in New York State for taxes, etc. So to then have that burden on their back and then not feel safe, for many has been a bridge too far, and that's why we've seen the mass exodus. But speaking of Hochul, we had talked about this with the Climate Change Superfund in a way, but hydraulic fracturing, we all know it as fracking, has transformed the United States into the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. But where is that not the case? Right here in New York, where foolish politicians like Governor Hochul stubbornly refuse to tap the enormous wealth benefit that is right below our feet. Two giant shale formations sit beneath much of the northeastern North America, and a lot of it is in the southern tier region here in New York. The Utica Shale, which lies below the Marcellus and may hold even more natural gas, extends further northwest into Canada and further east towards Albany. Together, these two formations are estimated to hold at least 500 to 1,000 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. While it's difficult to determine exactly how much of the gas lies within New York's borders, one study from the New York Energy Research and Development Authority estimated it at between 160 and 300 trillion cubic feet, enough to supply the state's total natural gas needs for up to 300 years. Think about this as you get your gas bill, as you will start to see the effects of the Climate Change Superfund bill that Governor Hochul signed into law. At today's market value, New York's reserves could be worth up to $1 trillion. Rather than exploit the economic benefits this offers, New York has allowed environmental hysteria to crush its fracking industry, beginning with a moratorium imposed by Governor David Paterson back in 2008. And of course, former Governor Cuomo, kept that intact. And last month, Hochul piled on, signing legislation banning the use of carbon dioxide for fracking instead of water. We're not fracking, we're not going backwards, she said in September. Now, I'm not going to go into the specifics, and you remember this debate. It's been raging, well, since 2009, but before that even, about what the process is. It's a safe process. Even to his credit, Pennsylvania Governor, Democrat Ben Shapiro, has resisted the environmentalists' rhetoric and continued efforts to ban fracking in his state. Now, we know how well fracking has been for Pennsylvania. Again, I'm not going to go through all the numbers here. Still, New York Democrats, led by Hochul, choose to waste this chance for this money. Fracking alone won't solve New York's economic problems, given the state's regulations, high taxes, general hostility to businesses, and unrealistic green energy goals. But reversing the ban on fracking is a good place to start. We don't believe that'll ever happen, but if you even look at, I know she wanted to win the vote in Pennsylvania, which she should have picked Governor Shapiro, but Kamala Harris even said, no, she's changed her opinion on fracking. So we had said at the time of this program, does that mean that Hochul will? Well, she has been clear in her position that she will not. Okay, there's your New York State. Hey, look at this comment. Thank you for covering natural gas fracking. You're welcome. That's a great piece if you want to find more. It's by Jonathan Lezer, and it goes into the very specifics of fracking. We've talked about it for a long time on this program. We talked about it just recently with the Assemblyman Phil Palmisano about the what a wasted move this is to cave to the environmentalist extremists and not explore fracking. It's to the point, unfortunately, in this state, as we see a mass exodus, as we see a climate that is not friendly towards business, I think many of us have just sadly accepted the fact that there won't be fracking in New York. But now you get someone like Elise Zeldin, a few points different, and he's governor, maybe there would have been. If we work hard for a Republican, a good solid Republican, to win governor in 2026, perhaps there will be fracking. But as long as it's a Patterson, a Cuomo, or a Hochul, we won't, unfortunately, see fracking in this state. And the economic boom, what it would mean for our gas bills as residents at a time when Governor Hochul's offering these, trying to offer, $400, $500 checks for inflation rebate or whatever. I mean, listen, I think we'd all take $500, but at the end of the day, wouldn't you rather have year-round cheaper natural gas, cheaper gas? But remember, they don't want you to use gas at all. They want your whole house to be electric, even though the grid is not ready for that, even though it'll lead to major blackouts. And think of a time like today, how cold it is, and it's supposed to be very cold these next few weeks. Imagine, heaven forbid, you lose power, which I know many of you in the rural areas lose power on a regular basis. So now you don't have heat, you don't have any way to cook. Think of the light, and this is not rhetoric, this is not hyperbole. You think of the lights that will be lost if all homes in New York State are fitted to go just electric. At a time when we could be looking at natural gas as a way to, well, heaven forbid, save some money as residents. All right, we got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back, Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, it's haunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
Name something with a diamond in it.
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught Norwegian teriyaki.
Share in the fun. Weeknights on Family Feud.
7 and 7:30 on Big.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio, getting all these comments in. I didn't have a chance to read them all. So we had the one viewer who said, "Thank you for covering natural gas fracking." Amen, Frank. This is as I must have been continuing to talk about it. You're my hero. Well, thank you. You're my hero. I appreciate that. That's very kind words. Very different opinion. From a different viewer, obviously. Fracking in the Finger Lakes would be a disaster, possibly ruin the lakes and winery industry. Thank you very much for that comment. And then we have a couple others. Here we go. We'll try. Democrat-controlled media only loves you when you do as they say until you bash them or do a woke beer commercial or Cuomo-type move. Then you're dirt. Unfortunately for legacy media, the TV-watching majority still rules them through their commercial sales income. In a way, but if you look at it, it's kind of interesting to me on that issue, because if you look at a CNN or an MSNBC, it is a failed business model in many ways because they keep losing viewers and alienating viewers, but it's almost as if the agenda and pushing the agenda is more important to them, meaning the anchors and the news hosts, the ones that are supposed to be untouched by the salespeople, so that's why I think there's that radicalism. Another comment from a different viewer. I worked on fracking in PA. It paid well. Now I'm retired and they want electric for everyone. The electric prices have more than doubled. They sure have. And the grid is just not there to stand. And this is going to be a topic that we discuss with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. He's so passionate about it. He knows all the figures when it comes to this, and it's terrifying. Look at I know we talk about it a lot, but the EV buses for schools, we're just not there yet. And think of, I guess, the hypocrisy of New York State, saying we don't have to, as a state, change over our vehicles for EV for a while, but school buses have to be changed very quickly. Here's a comment from a different viewer. Frank, the energy companies just invested $108 billion in the Utica Shale in Ohio. That could be New York. Absolutely. That should be New York. I'm glad. I thought the fracking issue would get you going this morning. I didn't realize just how much. Okay. Let's talk about Mike Johnson. And you can continue the discussion on fracking. I'd appreciate it. Mike Johnson's House Speaker bid looks shaky. It's kind of interesting. It depends on where you go for your media. I mean, again, this is what we've been talking about all morning, the legacy media. Some are saying, well, it looks pretty good for him. Others, like the Washington Post, saying it looks shaky, despite Trump's endorsement. See, they're already selling the narrative that if Johnson doesn't get it on the first vote or doesn't get it at all, that this is a huge loss for Trump, that this goes to show Trump just can't keep the Republicans together. And I don't think that's Trump's fault. I think it's certain Republicans who love getting this attention, unfortunately. And I know Ken was talking about it earlier, some who just like the attention from the left, or there's the other side that just likes to be kingmakers, the ones that are more aligned with Trump, but saying, well, for whatever reason, I can't support Johnson because of this belief. And I say, hey, if you stand up for your beliefs, that's one thing, absolutely. But sometimes this looks, to me anyway, like showboating or grandstanding. But the Washington Post saying that with less than 24 hours to go, actually just a few hours to go, Speaker Johnson is still working to win over a handful of Republican lawmakers who are skeptical of his leadership, which I don't understand. Listen, I get the pushback over the continuing resolution and that decision that he made. I think that was wrong. It was short-sighted. I don't think he had realized that, it was Trump's time to shine, meaning no longer the way Washington does things. I know you were thinking that started on January 20th, but it didn't. It started the moment that Trump won in Trump's mind. So I think he was just getting ready for that MAGA wave coming in, but had not realized that they weren't happy with waiting until January 20th. They wanted changes to happen now. So yes, that's one instance. But when it comes for the job he's done as Speaker. I think he's done a very good job. He proved his bona fides with his campaigning for Trump and his appearances on the Sunday news programs. Johnson has spent this week working the phones and met with lawmakers in the Capitol through Thursday evening to try to better understand the concerns of roughly half a dozen hardliners. I think some of the hardliners are literally, I don't think there are concerns. I think they wouldn't vote for anybody. It's really what it starts to feel like. Now, to win the gavel today, Johnson needs 218 votes. And now, I don't know about how you feel on this or how you feel about Johnson. I would love to see a unified Republican Party after that landslide victory in November saying, okay, you know what? There's things that maybe I don't like about Johnson, but going the Reagan rule, he's 80% my friend, not 20% my enemy. So we're going to go all in and show the country, show Washington, show Congress that we are ready to push Trump's agenda across the finish line. That, I think, would be a much better message than saying, I'm never going to vote for him because of one issue or because of this. I think you at that point are looking out for yourself and not out for either Trump's agenda or the American people. So we know Thomas Massie is a no vote. He'll definitely vote against Johnson. So then that means every other Republican will need to vote for Johnson. Now, the Democrats will not, quote unquote, bail him out this time. Democrats in the past have helped him on certain issues because of the slim majority. And this is a very slim majority, as you can see. They have already signaled Hakeem Jeffries that they will not. And there's reasons for that. One of them being that if it goes that bad, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but if it goes that bad, Hakeem Jeffries could eventually get voted in as the speaker. How would that happen? Well, some wishy-washy Republicans say, I want to get home. There's too many votes here. Or, hey, I'm going to go to that Democrat and say, hey, I'll vote for this if you support my bill here. You know, that kind of backroom dealings. And if enough do that, Hakeem Jeffries, after that huge landslide win for Republicans, a Democrat could be the Speaker of the House. If Johnson cannot get the necessary votes, the House keeps voting until Speaker is elected. Because without one, lawmakers cannot be sworn in to begin voting. So they can't start the process. And that means on January 6th, when they have to certify the election, they cannot do that until there's a Speaker of the House. Now, in that interview with Fox News, Johnson said conversations have focused on process reforms in the House. Two people familiar with the discussions who spoke on condition of anonymity to outline private ongoing negotiations said the Speaker was referencing efforts to ensure House Republicans can quickly pass conservative legislation while also cutting spending. After meeting with holdouts, Johnson predicted again on Fox that he would receive, quote, maybe one no vote and remained hopeful that he can win back the gavel on the first round of voting. Now, you would like to say, well, wouldn't one Democrat, two Democrats, something like that, reach across the aisle? Of course, you know the answer, no. So when Republicans will, where there's even talks that Republicans could see a Democrat in as Speaker because of how much they're willing to fight against the party's own interest, Democrats aren't like that. Democrats are going to rally around no matter what. Trump said he's the only one who can win right now. People like him. Almost everybody likes him. Though there are others who would be very good, they have 30 or 40 people that don't like them. So that's pretty tough. So he's saying Mike Johnson is the guy. Now, and this is what I'm saying, the Washington Post and so many others are pushing this narrative now, and this is the narrative they want to continue to push. Could Trump face another early setback in House Speaker's race? They're hoping they can use this as kind of a cudgel over Donald Trump to say, hey, look, he can't even govern his own people. This is going to be a disastrous 4 years. You can read the headlines already. And I don't want to go through why they say, you get it. But the biggest obstacle to Johnson's possible defeat could be the lack of an alternative. It's what helped Kevin McCarthy nab the job in the end, and how Johnson emerged to ultimately take his place after several more prominent Republicans couldn't get the votes. Now, the basics are, despite winning the presidency in the Senate, Republicans actually lost ground in the House, so it is even a slimmer majority. Now, the numbers change if someone votes present. That changes everything. Now, we know Massie from Kentucky is not going to vote for him. Several other Republicans have at least declined to back Johnson. The ones to watch for, the members to keep an eye on ahead of Friday's vote include the Freedom Caucus Chairman Andy Harris from Maryland, Chip Roy from Texas, Eric Burlison from Missouri, Tim Burkett from Tennessee, Ralph Norman from South Carolina, Scott Perry from Pennsylvania, and Victoria Spartz from Indiana. Roy, who often emphasized fiscal conservative over party loyalty, could prove a particularly pivoting figure, but don't sleep on someone like Spartz, who has proved to be a particularly unruly member of the conference as of late. Now, a couple scenarios. A drawn-out process reelects Johnson. That could be a long process. 2, Johnson is ousted. That seems like that's a tough one, but it could happen. And 3, Johnson wins relatively quickly. And finally, a coalition. This is not going to happen, but the idea of a coalition elected by both parties' speaker, because it's so unlikely, but the GOP's majority is so small and the party has proved so unwieldy that it can't be ruled out at some point if Republicans simply can't elect a speaker. Some more pragmatic Republicans spoke in earnest about this option when the party struggled to find a McCarthy successor and ultimately landed on Johnson. But they're saying that this would be a setback to Trump. What are your thoughts? What do you predict for today? It starts at noon. The fun begins, if you want to call it that, at noon. We've got a little more to talk about with this. Stay with us. We're running just a tad bit late. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
How many times have you tried to clean a stubborn mess but end up with no success? What you need is the all-new waterproof Ruby Horsepower, the new cordless and rechargeable power scrubber that cleans faster and easier, guaranteed. Watch, baked on oven grease is no match. It easily blasts away dirt and grime in no time. The power comes from our rotating brushes spinning at 350 RPM. The incredible torque fights calcium, soap, mildew, mold, and more. Forget harsh chemicals. With just plain water, Horsepower can clean bathroom tiles and tubs back to their original shine and luster. It's a game changer in the kitchen, where it busts through caked-on crud. Take it outside and tackle tough tasks with ease. How strong is Horsepower? We took this distressed 100-year-old antique and restored it to like new with Horsepower. Amazing! Get your Ruby Horsepower scrubber today with bonus scouring sponge for just $39.99. Save on buying batteries. It's powered with the latest rechargeable technology. But wait, you'll also get this stainless steel brush to make range hoods and gas stoves look brand new again. Yours free. And we're not done. You'll get this Smart Flex cone brush that fits perfectly into corners, tiny crevices on toilets and tiles, or hard to reach shower door rails. Yours free. And to top it off, we'll include this microfiber cloth to clean delicate surfaces and polish cars sparkling clean. It's also free. Great news! Horsepower is now in stock and ready to ship, but due to high demand, there is a strict limit of 2 per order. Order now.
Call 1-800-980-4241. That's 1-800-980-4241, or visit horsepowerscrubber.com. So call 1-800-980-4241 now.
The Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Give them a call today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. So many comments and waves coming in. I appreciate that. Ken writes, Frank, I've always had this crazy thought on why the Democrats are soft on crime. This is in reference to the piece we were talking about in New York State specifically. The Dems can't effectively control the various police forces across the country. If they can make the sheeple believe that the local and state police can't protect the people, they could swoop in and save the day by federalizing the police departments across the nation. Thank you, Ken. Next up from a different viewer. Another thing I think they need to change is if you live in New York and work in PA, you pay taxes in both states. How is that fair? I know if you work in PA, you pay New York taxes. I'm not sure how it works the other way around. So I'm not exactly positive what you're saying. But please feel free to explain further. So Mike Johnson's speakership to be put to another test in the first vote of the new Congress. Now, C-SPAN has been granted permission to run cameras inside the chamber. If every member votes, Johnson can only afford one Republican deflection, as we know. And Massey has already, and that's Thomas Massey, I keep just calling him by his last name, Representative Thomas Massey from Kentucky. He is signaled time and time again that he's absolutely no vote. As a matter of fact, he went as far as saying, and he was asked by Matt Gaetz, if Chip Roy were asked to serve as chairman of the Rules Committee, would that be enough to get your vote for Mike Johnson? Thomas Massey said, oh no, you could pull all my fingernails out. You could shove bamboo up in them. You can start cutting off my fingers. I'm not voting for Mike Johnson tomorrow. And you could take that to the bank. You know that, Matt. Again, this is about showboating and grandstanding, isn't it? This is about him wanting the attention, in my opinion. Republicans have a long history of this, and you can disagree, and you can contact me and set me straight. But they have a long history of a few people that always know they're the smartest person in any room they walk into. That you are not a true believer in the conservative movement because they're more conservative, or they're more Republican, or they're more whatever. They're definitely smarter. That's their mindset. And there's always been those people. And I'm not saying that necessarily about Massey. Don't put words in my mouth. I'm just saying there are Republicans who, for a long time, who always think that they're the smartest person in the room and that they are more conservative. Look, for instance, we see it here in New York State, if we want to tie it back in with New York State, where you have a lot of gun owners that don't vote because a Republican candidate isn't strong enough on guns. Now, you would say, but wait a minute. We know where Hochul stands, and that's not good for gun owners. So wouldn't you want someone, again, going to the Reagan's theory that 80% my friend, 20% my enemy, that maybe that they're not as active in maybe shooting sports or hunting or something? That doesn't mean that they're disqualifying. And that's, Republicans do this, historically, where, 99% of the things I agree with, but that 1% is just too much. Or they don't speak out enough about this topic or that topic, and they turn on them. And that's what I think we're seeing here, where it's I've got to prove that I'm the smartest person in the room. I've got to prove that I'm the biggest, baddest conservative. But Massey's the only one that has specifically come out and said he's an absolute no. Other Republicans have refused to say if they'd vote for him or not, but have not directly come out and said that they will not. I'm going to talk to Mike and raise my concerns. As of right now, I'm still undecided, said Representative Tim Burkett from Tennessee. Chip Roy said he's still undecided, but then had to put the caveat he was not happy with that continuing resolution, saying, but something must change. We cannot allow what happened right before Christmas, where a 1,500-plus page bill was attempted to be jammed through over our objections, all of which could have avoided with any serious planning and communication. So again, I know that continuing resolution was a mistake on Speaker Johnson's part, but I don't think that throws him completely out of the running. I don't think that's enough to say that he's completely. Wouldn't you say, okay, say you disagree with Johnson on 10% of things, 20, let's say even 20. Wouldn't you also say, but man, if we could show a unified front and get him in there day one and then get ready to certify the election on the 6th and really show the American people why they voted for us, because it's time to hit the ground running? Wouldn't that be much more positive than having to deal with a little bit of negative that you don't like with Johnson? I mean, the overwhelming positive message that would send, and just preparing again for January 20th, hitting the ground running. I just think that would be such a important message to the people who voted overwhelmingly for Republicans on November 5th. Johnson was on Fox and Friends yesterday saying, we're going to get this done. We're shifting into a brand new paradigm. We have unified government that begins tomorrow. We have the White House, the Senate, and the House. A totally different situation than we dealt with over the last 14 months since I've been Speaker. So we're excited to deliver on the America First agenda. It begins on day one, and all that begins right here tomorrow, meaning, because the interview was yesterday, meaning today. And that's the unifying message that you'd love to see, that we're ready. We're not going to be infighting. We're going to get that agenda that the American people voted for. We're going to get that across the finish line. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. I see some comments coming in. Keep them coming in. Keep the waves coming in. Thank you for joining us on this chilly Friday morning. So glad that you are part of the program. We've covered a little bit of everything today. And I'm glad that the New York State issues are first and foremost on people's minds, talking about this fracking, talking about public safety, so I appreciate that. Let's take that break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, we will be right back.
Heather and I had an argument just like any other couple. I was lost and lonely. I had snapped. I had a gun and I was going to take my own life. Heather helped me realize that there was still life to live. For the better of myself, my family, my weapon is now safely put away.
My son, Ricky, took his life by the use of a firearm. It broke me in ways that I never knew that I could be broken. And I contemplated suicide. Afterwards, we found out his girlfriend, she was pregnant. If that was my grandson, I was gonna have to be here for him. I still own my firearm. I keep it in a safe because I want to keep my grandson and myself safe.
A moment of crisis can happen to anyone.
Store your gun securely, locked, unloaded, and away from ammo.
The Fox Sports app isn't just any sports app. It's your sports app.
For the touchdown!
Yeah, yours. Your teams. Your highlights. Your scores. Your stories. Just choose your favorites to get more of what you want.
To the end zone!
And of course, stream your teams live. The best part is free with your pay TV subscription. Grab your Fox Sports app today.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is history. It's the Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Thank you so much for joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. We're talking all the issues of the day. Here's a comment from a viewer explaining a little bit further what they were saying in the last message. When you file for income tax in New York and work in PA, they both take your share. Double jeopardy. Yes, I understand that. I thought that's what you were getting at. I wasn't positive, and I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole if I was wrong. Yes, they absolutely do. And I would say, unfortunately, I'm not surprised. I remember when Rush Limbaugh used to talk about, I think it was down to the day where he had to basically prove whether or not he was in New York on whether or not he would pay taxes. It was like a daily, almost diary, where they'd have to document whether or not he were to pay taxes in New York. So I understand. I totally understand what you're saying. Does not seem fair. It's also probably, I'm guessing, very frustrating if you have a job in Pennsylvania. Okay. Next up, comment from a viewer. In my opinion, Trump should have stayed neutral and not have supported Johnson. Interesting. Perhaps a few Democrats would have supported Johnson because he did try to stay bipartisan at times, or didn't he? Yeah, maybe a little bit. There was definitely, I think that continuing resolution was an example of that. But I don't think there's a scenario, even if Trump didn't come out and endorse him, I don't think in this situation, because it's going to be Republicans in the White House, the House, and the Senate, I don't think any Democrats would have supported him. That's not typically how Democrats operate in scenarios like this. They're very loyal to each other, and I don't see where, no matter how much they like Johnson, in this case, I think they want the infighting. I think they want the headlines that say that Trump can't control his own people, that it's already a mess, those type of things. So I appreciate your point. I think that part's a little wishful thinking, but I understand your thoughts that Trump should have stayed neutral, and maybe in the long term it would have been a little bit better for him. Maybe if it doesn't go well with Johnson. But either way, they were going to try to pin this to Trump and be critical of him no matter how it goes. Now, as I mentioned, Johnson is optimistic he'll remain the House Speaker. I think we'll get it done in the first round. Now, I think that's a little bit much. Though I'd like to see it. I'm certainly hopeful for that because, as we know, we got to stick together. We'll be operating with the smallest margin in U.S. history for much of the first 100 days of the Congress and perhaps longer into the year. Look, I'm a proven fighter. I'm a MAGA conservative, but I'm also someone who can get everyone in that broad array that we have in the House GOP to work together. And that's what's necessary in the days ahead. Now, not everyone shares his optimism. He doesn't have the votes, which isn't a secret, said one House GOP aide bluntly. Not all Republicans expect he will meet the same fate. Thomas Massie has already publicly come out against him. As I said, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. There's about a dozen members who remain undecided, but have not come out and specifically said they would not vote for him. Just about a dozen who have said that they will remain neutral for the time being. He does face an uphill battle. His critics also have become reinvigorated during the government spending flap last month, per the aide, who claimed the initial bill Johnson unveiled was a disaster and full of Democrat wins, and it was. And I think it was. He really, as someone that looked like he was sailing in to the speakership, really, it was an unforced error in that situation. It was his own mistake, so that's why I understand some people being critical of him. I don't think it's disqualifying for him. I just think it was doing things the way they were done before Trump was reelected, and that was where he forgot where he was at time-wise. So we don't have to go through that whole continuing resolution. We all know that. And we all know the numbers. We've talked about it. But Republicans are becoming very critical, some, not all obviously, with Chip Roy and others. Alex Nitzberg from Fox News reports, as House Speaker Mike Johnson aims to retain his role, Representative Derek Van Orden from Wisconsin targeted his fellow Republican representative, Chip Roy, who has indicated that he is undecided. Chip Roy has indicated that he's undecided. Van Orden asserted in a post that Trump, quote, received a mandate from the American people in November. And I think that's a very good point. While Roy did not. And I think that's a fair point that Van Orden is making, that the people that voted for Trump and the landslide victories for Republicans, that was a signal to work together, get things done for the quote-unquote America First agenda or the MAGA agenda, whatever you want to call it. It is the America First agenda, not the Chip Roy First agenda. It is Make America Great Again, not Make Chip Roy Great Again. President Trump is fighting for America. Chip Roy is fighting to keep his brand marketable. No punches pulled by Representative Derek Van Orden on that one. Continuing, some people apparently need to understand that in order to be a leader, you have to learn how to follow first. I would love to work with Chip, but he needs to understand he can be part of the team, but there is no way in heck he is the captain. The captain will be moving back into the White House shortly, and his first lieutenant is Speaker Johnson, Van Orden declared. And I do think there's something with that, and I'm not pointing towards Chip Roy specifically, but Massey and others, that they have that power with that one vote, and they want to be treated as kingmaker. They want to be treated as, Van Orden saying here, the captain, as a leader. And that's not the power that he's been given. That's not what the vote was about, right? Roy has noted that he's undecided on Johnson, but is demanding change, as I mentioned. The real reason I am undecided on the speaker vote, as opposed to a hard no, is it's not all the fault of Speaker Johnson, and my desire is to give him grace and Donald Trump room to deliver on a strong agenda for which we were elected. But something must change, he noted. Wow, he was not, Representative Van Orden, not beating around the bush. It's the America First agenda, not the Chip Roy First agenda. It's to Make America Great Again, not Make Chip Roy Great. President Trump is fighting for America. Chip is fighting to keep his brand marketable. On that note, we got to take a short break. I see some other comments coming in. What are your thoughts on the speaker's race? We are going to, because we only have about 15 minutes left, we're going to catch up on a couple other things that I think are important to get to as well. But your thoughts, I'd love to hear. Do you think, boy, it's the math is tough, but do you think Johnson gets it? I think maybe he ultimately does. I don't think that first vote probably is going to go his way. And all it takes, you've watched it before on C-SPAN, you start the process and then, okay, Massie, all right, that's a no vote. And then that other no vote goes and it's all over but the shouting, but you have to sit there and watch as the other votes come in. It's a long, tedious process. And if you're politically wonky, you might like it. But it could be a long day. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
Heather and I had an argument just like any other couple. I was lost and lonely. I had snapped. I had a gun and I was going to take my own life. Heather helped me realize that there was still life to live for the better of myself, my family. My weapon is now safely put away.
My son, Ricky, took his life by the use of a firearm. It broke me in ways that I never knew that I could be broken. And I contemplated suicide. Afterwards, we found out his girlfriend, she was pregnant. If that was my grandson, I was gonna have to be here for him. I still own my firearm. I keep it in a safe because I want to keep my grandson and myself safe.
A moment of crisis can happen to anyone.
Store your gun securely, locked, unloaded, and away from ammo.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is history making. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio, receiving so many great comments from viewers. First up, Thomas Massey will soon be part of the Liz Cheney Club. I hope that he's enjoying his time in the spotlight. I think you raised a really good point. It's a little bit different than the Liz Cheney in the sense that Massey's not going to get the attention, the positive attention that Cheney received. He's going to get attention by the MSNBC, and he'll be used a useful kind of tool by the media to say, look how bad Trump is doing at governing, and he can't get his own people together. So yes, in that sense, Liz Cheney became a different level in a weird way because she was endorsing Harris, and there's so many extra levels to her kind of being a Republican that apparently hates Republicans. So she got that, definitely the red carpet treatment. I think Massey's getting the, I don't want to use the derogatory term they use in politics, but we'll just say useful. He's useful to the media and the left's agenda, so they'll, he'll be in the spotlight. And I think more than the spotlight when it comes to the media for someone like Massey, and I agree with your point. I hope it doesn't sound differently. I think that with Massey, he likes the people having to come to him and realizing, in his mind, everybody realizes he's the most conservative, he's the smartest person in the room. Now, whatever you think about that with Massey, that's what he believes, in my opinion. That's what that's the thrill that he's getting out of this. Here's a good comment from a viewer too. Just asking, after Liz Cheney, when is Biden going to give Kathy Griffin a medal? Hopefully before she goes to an internment camp, LOL. Yeah, she actually said that. This is a good point. This is a good tie-in. Bear with me. This ego kind of trip about being, I'm not voting for this person because I'm smarter than this. I'm more conservative than this. It's that same kind of ego trip that says right now Trump is thinking about me. And I'm on Trump's enemies list because I'm in the media. And I'm Kathy Griffin, who wasn't her whole reality show called like C-lister or D-lister. But anyway, her big claim to fame was she held up that head of Trump at the very beginning in 2016, and she's been kind of living off of that. Well, she recently said, to this viewer's astute point, she recently said that come and see her. What a way to promote your show, by the way. Tickets must not have been selling well. Come and see me perform before they throw me in an internment camp. Do you think there's any scenario where Trump is thinking about her or the people around Trump? I mean, she's so irrelevant at this point. So yes, she will probably receive an award now that you've said that. All right, a comment on a completely different topic coming from Ken. New York might have to plan to help. Let me try again. New York might have a plan to help limit electric use in the state. As you stated, the infrastructure isn't there to feed the push for increased electric use. So enter the smart meters and the monthly information from NYSEG on how each house's electronic usage compares to the average. Right now, the reason for the smart meters is to remotely read the meters, to save money by eliminating employed meter readers. You can currently opt out of having the smart meters installed if you want to pay a special fee to have your meters read by a person. Eventually, they may make them mandatory. I think they probably will make them mandatory. Also, I think you would have to be very proactive on that because I've heard, and it kind of happened to me in a way, that those smart meters, you may not even know they put them on. You may want to go check. You might have been at work that day or out getting groceries or something, and they installed it because it doesn't take very long. And it costs, what is it, $14? I think I read $14 a month if you want to keep the old meters. But continuing with Ken's point, in the future, if individuals are using more than the average share of electricity and there's a chance of the infrastructure being overloaded, the smart meter could interrupt the electric to your home to allow the people using the average amount to still have power. Thank you, Ken. I have not read a ton into the smart meters, but it isn't, if nothing else, it's interesting because you've got to think there's a lot of people that have lost a job. It's kind of like the self-checkouts at the grocery stores. This is now kind of the self-checkout of the electric company. Speaking of the speakers race, I do like that point about Kathy Griffin. I'm getting a chuckle out of that. Thank you for that. GOP leadership is angling to diminish the motion used to oust a House Speaker in order to avoid a repeat of the mutiny against Kevin McCarthy. We brought this to you very quickly yesterday, but it's worth reiterating. Under the new rules package that is slated to vote today, the motion to vacate the chair will require a lawmaker in the majority party to garner 8 co-sponsors in the same party in order to get a vote. So this idea that one person, like was the instance with Matt Gaetz could keep saying, we don't want McCarthy in there anymore, and that's all it took was one person to start that process. Now it's got to be co-sponsored by 8 others. That means a minimum of 9 Republicans will have to back an effort to topple their speaker in order to trigger a vote. Given the GOP's slim control in the House, if a representative meets that threshold, the speaker would be ousted unless Democrats intervene. Yeah, it would be all over with that number. So maybe that's why they went that direction. Various Republican factions had reached a deal on the rule change in November. The threshold for a vote on the motion had previously been 1, which Matt Gaetz exploited time and again. So that's what we're looking at today. That's the big news of the day, the speaker's race, which will begin at noon today, and we'll see how long that process takes. One quick thing before we take our last break of today's edition of Frankly Speaking, we're going to, you know how we do this on Friday, we're going to go through a lot of quick stories on our way out the door. But get your last minute comments in too. As a reminder, on Monday during the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program, we will be talking to Andy Petros. He has that forum coming up. It's Zoom, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home. It's a forum on how to run for elected office, for local public office, because next year is see, I forgot that we already had New Year's. This year is a big year for local public office, very big. In 2026 even, all county legislative seats are up for election. But there's going to be a lot of races coming up. So we talked about that with former Congressman, Assemblyman-elect, and Steuben County Republican Chair Joe Sempolinski. So if you are interested in running, he has a forum coming up on January 8th at 6 p.m. It's absolutely free, and it's on how to run. So we're going to hear all about it on Monday's edition of the show during the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of the program. All right, get your last minute comments in and your last minute predictions. At the end of the day, will there be a new speaker? Will it be Speaker Johnson? Or will we still be going into votes past day number 1? Love to hear your thoughts. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Today's top story, increasing fuel costs continue to drive up inflation, making it harder to afford everything from food to home heating.
Here at Hustlesons, we know the only way to beat inflation is to fight inflation. So we're fighting back with zero interest financing and big cash rebates. Get a 4-person hot tub for your family for as little as $100 per month and pay zero interest. Or save up to $3,000 on a fabulous salt system hot tub. And of course, you will always get Hustlesons' unbelievable service. Don't let inflation fears kill your dreams. Fight back with Hustlesons. Remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hustlesons.
Sid and Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon.
Weeknights at 6:30 on Big Fox.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. We are back wrapping up today's edition of Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. I want to mention this real quickly because this is awful nice. Congressman Langworthy has announced this year's winner of the Congressional App Challenge. That winner, Jessica Park of Williamsville East High School. She's the winner of the 2024 Congressional App Challenge. I'm assuming this is to get young people involved in technology and programming and the like. Her app is named Stand Up, and it aims to address bullying by raising awareness about the emotional and neurological effects of bullying on victims, bystanders, and bullies themselves. The congressman had this to say. The Congressional App Challenge highlighted the creativity, problem-solving, and coding skills of students in Western New York and the Southern Tier. Congratulations to Jessica Park of Williamsville East High School, the winner of this year's Congressional App Challenge for New York's 23rd Congressional District. Jessica's app, Stand Up, showcases her talent and hard work to develop a solution to a critical issue facing her peers. I'm proud to support programs that encourage STEM learning and recognize the bright futures of our local students. Now, Jessica was questioned about her win, saying, "The inspiration for creating Stand Up came from my own experience and a deep desire to address bullying in a meaningful way. Growing up, I saw the impact of bullying in my school and community, and it left a lasting impression on me." So congratulations to Jessica Park of Williamsville East High School, the winner of the 2024 Congressional App Challenge. Now, her app will be on display in Washington. So I thought that was ending on kind of a different type note. We are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. I'm seeing if there's anything I can rush through really quickly. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to mention. According to Axios, Biden discussed the plans to strike Iran's nuclear sites if Tehran speeds towards a bomb. This seems to go against kind of his history in this scenario. But White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan presented President Biden with options for a potential U.S. attack on Iran's nuclear facilities if the Iranians move towards a nuclear weapon before January 20th. This was in a meeting several weeks ago that remains secret until now. 3 sources with knowledge of the issue have told and confirmed this to Axios. Now, a U.S. strike on Iran's nuclear program during the lame duck period would be an enormous gamble from a president who promised he would not allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon, but who would also risk handing a fresh conflict over to his successor, which, let's face it, has kind of been looking like a trend. At one point, Donald Trump Jr. suggesting that he wanted to start World War III as an impediment to his father's presidency. Oh, one last comment before we head out the door. Hey, how about this one? Frank, you have a great show. Have a great day. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you. And you have a great day as well, and have a great weekend, because we will be back on Monday morning with so much to cover. As I said, Andy Petros, looking at the timer, Andy Petros will be our guest, find out more about running for office, so you won't want to miss that. We'll find out. Then we'll get to talk about what's going on with the speaker's race, whether it's over, whether it's Johnson, whether we're still going in, because remember, the 6th is the day to certify the election. January 6th is the day to certify the election, so it's going to be an important decision made today when it comes to the speaker's race, and that begins at noon, and we'll be talking about it on Monday morning's edition of Frankly Speaking. So please join us every weekday morning, starting at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox, have a great day, everyone, and we will see you Monday morning, bright and early. I look forward to it already. Have a great weekend.
Are you ready for winter in New York State? Ready for thrills like this? Discoveries like this? Views like this? Are you ready to make memories? Plan the perfect trip or have an impromptu getaway. It's time to explore everything that makes New York easy to love. Discover more at iloveny.com.